For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This is known as Newton's third law of motion. And it actually kind of has a good storytelling sense in a way, or at least it's good kind of storytelling rule, because we almost innately have the sense of justice. We want to see things done right. And now, sometimes that can be either smeared or colored by our biases or perceptions of the world. For the most part, we kind of want to see characters face their proper consequences in stories. But not always. And I'm kind of going to talk more about the subversions and natural practices in a way, but kind of you talked about both in a sense when you go into the subversions. But anyway, the kind of thing is that with consequences, there are some people that almost blatantly ignore them, and one of those can be that the main character or the main characters will did away with a lot. Like we're following them in the story, so we already kind of vested interest in them, and this can be seen in like heist films and so forth, where the main characters are a group of criminals, but they're likable criminals, so we follow them even though they're doing a bad thing. And this can also be seen also when the audience has an influence over it. So if the audience really likes a character that the writers have been setting up to be evil and then punished for it, they may let the character off the hook a bit. Or in playing a game, the character may be looting through every chest they come across, but they're still treated as a hero by everyone, even though they've been pretty much a kleptomaniac throughout the whole game. It's almost like expected game player behavior or whatever. But the other thing is that this can also be seen in real life at times, where people have this main character syndrome in a sense of that the whole world revolves around them. So whatever they think is right is what is right and how it should be. And kind of one of the most blatant examples you can think of is when someone is assigning consequences to someone else, and then they have those same consequences dealt back at them. And again, it's like whatever standard they're using to someone, they aren't really measuring up to it, and they're assigning punishments based on that standard. But when they're held to that standard or whatever, or they're dealt the same punishment back, it's like, no, have mercy, don't do this to me, don't be doing this. And it is rather hypocritical when we see it in action. But the thing to remember is that most people do have that biased sense of perspective where what they see as right is right, and sometimes that can be, oh, I want to see this person punished because I don't like what they've done or who they are or whatever. But then it's like we all have that vested self-interest of wanting to be protected. So again, that can be a useful tool for characters in a story, but it's rather a warning sign when dealing with those kind of people in real life. But then we have the punishment and redemption. Now again, a lot of people like redemption. It's almost a scandal of getting off with a slap on the wrist when you've done something very bad, in a sense. It's scandalous. But the thing is with a lot of that is that it needs to kind of have a bit of balance. Like a good redemption arc does generally have there be some consequences before they get fully accepted. They don't just do like, oh hey, I know I was trying to destroy you all recently, but hey, I'm good now. That just generally doesn't fly. Yet there are often times where there is a reward without punishment, and sometimes this is because people just generally like the character that should have been punished. And so, again, there's kind of this statement of if evil, why hot? But the thing is, again, it can be very narratively dissatisfying. As in, it's like there's no reason for this character to be forgiven. And sometimes there's almost a string of it, but it's like this character has been exceptionally bad towards our group in particular. Why are you forgiving them just because they say they're good now? They kind of like the reward of redemption has to be almost earned story-wise, even though forgiveness can be very scandalous. But I guess they're earning the trust in a sense in that redemption. They're earning the trust, not necessarily forgiveness. But then it can be very arbitrary of what people want to see forgiven. And then there can be some characters, oh, we would never forgive them, whereas other characters like, oh, yes, yes, even though they've done far worse things than this other person, we'll forgive them because we like them. And so it can just be very arbitrary. And again, it's one of those things where people are very tricked to ask for forgiveness when they're facing the consequences they've tried to div out towards others. And so it's just something to really be cautious of, I guess, would be the right word. But then we ask ourselves is who gets rewarded? And this can be a question both in real life and stories. Because again, do we give credit where credit is due? Or do we basically always point out the flaws rather than what's actually good? And this is actually kind of one of those things that we really should think about, because we don't really give out credit where it is due. We don't always congratulate people when they've done something good or had something good happen to them. Instead, we tend to point out the flaws and so forth. Then most people tend to be very quick to point out the negative rather than the positive. It's just something to be aware of. But this also kind of does give the kind of tragic thing of the hero having a lack of reward or recognition for what they've done, or that they're even kind of treated as a villain for actually saving the day, or treated as whatever, discarded, whatever, even though they've done so much. That's a tragedy because it is not the proper consequences it should be, but it can show what is wrong in that situation as well. And again, in a way, it kind of shows us where our mindset is when we don't give people the proper reward, in a sense, as in where we need to improve our sites and so forth. So it's just, again, something to think about. But anyway, these are some of my thoughts on proper consequences, especially in stories. So feel free to share your perspective in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, you can like and share it so others may enjoy as well. Anyway, I'm Jonah, and you've been watching Lionsman Media, where we celebrate stories and the lessons we learn them. Thanks for listening to my musings. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.